Hello and welcome to the first AFL SuperCoach live team show for 2025. Paton here, joined by my colleague Matt Forrest. Forrest, welcome aboard for a new era of live SuperCoach coverage. We're going to be doing this every Thursday pretty much for the next 24 weeks or so buckle in, or 25 weeks, I guess, or maybe longer given what the AFL is doing with the fixture, but we'll get to that in a second. But basically the basic gist of the show is we're just going to talk about the teams which have just dropped. We'll reveal all the big ins and outs and all the names you need to know for SuperCoach. Rookies obviously is a huge thing for us at this stage of the season. But just having a quick glance at the teams a second ago, there's plenty to talk about, even though there's only 2 games now in opening round. But welcome aboard, and how you feeling about footy starting again, maybe one day later than we thought it was going to be, but your mighty Hawks will kick things off at the SCG tomorrow night.
Thanks, Alex. Good to be here. Yeah, you know what? I'm a little bit disappointed that there's no footy on tonight. I got up for Thursday night footy to start the season. We'll obviously see Hawthorn and Sydney do battle at the SCG tomorrow night, so it's not that much waiting around and having that extra game in round 3 is certainly great for SuperCoach. It opens it up a little bit in terms of those players that had that early season bye that we can now pick. So there is some positives to it all. But yeah, very exciting to have footy back. We've been counting down the days for quite a while now, and it's finally here, so let's crack in.
Yeah, I should mention off the top, of course, that SuperCoach officially kicks off in round 1. So these opening round games, only 2 of them now, don't officially count towards the season. The first lockout is before that Richmond-Carlton game next Thursday. So don't have to panic about making sure your team is in before tonight's game, but still worth watching. Obviously, you can pick a team. You can just still make unlimited changes up until next week. And those opening round points don't count towards anyone's rankings or anything, but they will come into effect when we're calculating price changes and things like that. So if someone has a really big score tonight, that will affect what happens to their price. So especially when some of those cheaper guys, that's something that we can look out for over this weekend. But you did touch on it, that we should mention the news that's come out just today. And obviously over the last few days, we should mention thoughts to anyone watching in Queensland, Southeast Queensland, with the cyclone bearing down. Must be pretty horrible just knowing that it's coming. But obviously the AFL's decided not to play footy up there this weekend, which I think is probably the smart move, and hopefully everybody can stay safe. But so what is happening with those 2 games? The AFL has released a statement today saying the postponed opening round match between the Brisbane Lions and Geelong has been rescheduled for round 3 of the 2025 Toyota AFL Premiership, and the game between Gold Coast Suns and Essendon has been set for round 24. So as you said, Geelong and Brisbane had the bye originally in round 3, and they were going to play an opening round. Now they're just playing in round 3 instead. So effectively that just becomes part of round 3, part of a regular season, and the SuperCoach rules, sort of any changes will be announced when everything's locked away. So I don't have that officially yet, but I assume if that's just part of the season, effectively we just scratch that whole thing, and that game's being played regularly as if it was just part of round 3 to begin with. So yeah, as you say, it makes it a lot easier to pick Geelong and Brisbane players for sure, and potentially even Collingwood and Sydney guys as well, who do still have a bye in round 3. So it's still a best 18 round, but with only the 2 teams missing. Not as heinous as we thought it was going to be, but the other game's still a little bit interesting what the AFL does with that. So they've announced it will be part of round 24. So Gold Coast and Essendon will play twice. They both still have a bye early in the year. Gold Coast in round 2, Essendon in round 4. So I'd probably be steering clear of those guys still in my opening team. And then as I said, the SuperCoach official accounts and everything will announce exactly what we do when we know exactly what's happening with that game later in the year. So maybe been following the finger on the pulse closer than me, Foz, do we know exactly when this game is going to be played? They're just we know that Gold Coast and Essendon will effectively play 2 games in round 24. So that's grand final week in SuperCoach, but we assume that that sort of extra game will be a bit later than the rest, or do we know exactly how that's going to work?
It's still not clear exactly how it's going to be played. There's an expectation that it's going to be the last game of the season. However, the AFL isn't set in stone with that. We obviously know that the last third of the campaign is a floating fixture, and the AFL doesn't set anything in stone until much closer to the date. So that still falls into place. The expectation and the most likely scenario is that it does get played in that round, the last game of round 24, which will be on the Wednesday or the Thursday of ahead of the pre-finals bye, to try and give the teams as long of a break as possible going into the hopefully a finals campaign for Bombers or Suns fans. There is the chance that it is played early on in the round, and then a Carlton Essendon game at the MCG closes round 24, or the game between Gold Coast and Port Adelaide potentially is the last game of the season. That those 2 options are much less likely than Gold Coast and Essendon being played round 24 to close the season as potentially a dead rubber, could be, or it could be a real grandstand finish for either side who are desperate to try and clinch a finals berth.
Yeah, as you say, the AFL probably we probably won't know that one for a little while. Maybe that they'll hold off, and it might depend how the clubs are actually tracking and what they think is going to happen, and when they actually schedule that game. So we won't know 100% for SuperCoach what that means until we know exactly when the game is going to be played. But we will announce it as soon as we know. But yeah, I think my thinking going into the season would be probably not going to be rushing to pick Gold Coast and Essendon players. We know they're going to have the early bye, and we're not 100% sure what's happening later on in the year. So, but we'll get into the teams that are playing in opening round. So the Swans and the Hawks, as you say, kick everything off. And if we call those up, we should be able to see those teams. I should mention too, before we just get into this, that we might answer some questions too. So if you've got any questions, leave them in the comments and we can try and get to those later on. But looking here for us at the Swans. So we heard earlier today that they have announced a debutant, which we love in SuperCoach, and that is Tom Hanley. He's in the final spot on the bench there, so I'm not sure if that indicates whether he might be the sub or not. We'll find out that when the final teams come in an hour before the game. But he's, I think, pretty much a small forward, 119K in SuperCoach in the midfield. I think he averaged about 58 points in the VFL last year. He was a mid-season draft pickup by the Swans last year. So I'm not sure we'd be all scrambling to get him in our SuperCoach teams, but I guess the benefit of round zero is we can have a look at him. And if he puts up a decent score like Blake Howes did last year, maybe he's a free hit for us. But anything else jump out to you in that Sydney lineup?
Not really. I think there's going to be plenty of movement in terms of players coming, opportunities coming to guys, and especially the younger crew like Angus Sheldrick, Corey Warner will get his chance as well. Obviously, some serious big names missing out of that side. Callum Mills, Logan McDonald, Errol Goulden with that nasty ankle fracture, Robbie Fox and Harry Cunningham as well. So there's plenty of guys missing that with a lot of experience. That side does look very different to what it did on grand final day. But it's a new coach, new era at the Swans, and exciting to see sort of how they look and how they structure up, especially in that forward half with Tom McCartan named at centre half forward. I know he's not SuperCoach relevant, but it does change the look of that forward line.
Notable Brodie Grundy had a bit of an injury cloud, but he's there. Angus Sheldrick, a popular SuperCoach pick, named on the bench. Will hopefully, as I say, opening round, good chance to get a look at exactly what his role is. Hopefully get some time in the midfield. And Ben Patton's another one worth noting. No relation, but I'll claim him. Named at halfback, former Saint, delisted and picked up by the Swans over the summer in the SSP period. I think he's a cheap defender, which we don't have many of. So he's a forward mid TPP actually, which might come in handy at some stage. But definitely an option for the defensive bench, about 133K in SuperCoach. We're interesting to see how he goes. I wouldn't be expecting him to score heaps of points, but he probably should have a pretty secure role, which is a big tick when we're pretty short of rookies in the back line. Now, if we go to the Hawks, there's some more interesting stuff here, and you're a big Hawks man, as already mentioned. So, we'll try and keep it under. We won't go for too long, but what do you like here? And I mean, the one that jumps straight out to me is James Sicily named on the wing. So what do we make of that? I've picked him in my back line in SuperCoach, hoping he's just going to float around taking heaps of intercept marks, but don't know if I really love him as a wingman.
Well, he spent most of the preseason training down back alongside Barrass, Battle, Scrimshaw, Frost, and he's looked quite good. He has pinch hit in the forward line a little bit, just to keep him fresh in that sort of role in case, it's a break glass in case of emergency. But if you look at that forward line structure, and I know Hawthorn's playing funny buggers here by naming, Will Dane forward pocket when we know he's going to start in the centre bounce. Harry Morrison's not a centre half forward. There's a lot of flux in that side, and there's going to be a lot of changes. However, I think a lot of signs point to Sicily spending a fair chunk of time in the forward line, mainly due to the Sam Frost selection. I know he's named on the bench, but he's a lockdown back. Battle's going to play a key defensive role as well. Barrass, Scrimshaw, they're all tools. Weddle's down there as well. Hardwick's named at full back, but he'll start in the forward line. But I think the lack of Gunston and the lack of especially Max Ramsden in the forward line, who wasn't even named on the in the emergencies, points to Sicily spending at least half a game up forward, I would expect.
Yeah. Well, again, thank goodness for opening round, because I wouldn't have wanted to go into round one with this situation. So at least we'll get to see it in action. But it sounds like I might be looking for another option in defence there, because that would be, even if he plays in defence a lot of the time, it's going to be very nervous every week watching to see what the coach does with him. And okay, so we'll jump into the Sunday game now. I sort of had forgotten about this. I've gone a whole summer not worrying about it, but now we have the return, footy's back, and the extended interchange bench is back for these Sunday games. So we'll find out on Friday night, I guess, 5 p.m. or something on Friday, who makes the final cut. And because there's a few names on here that I'll be very closely watching. In fact, 2 players in my team on the extended interchange for the Giants there, in James Leake and Connor Stone. Sort of the on-field lineup is pretty much what you expect there. But looking at those names on the interchange, do you reckon they're a chance to play, or am I in danger?
I think there's going to be there'll be a couple of debutants, which is really exciting. I think Leckerli is going to be in that side. Connor Stone, neither of them are debutants, but I think they're both in that 23. I'm expecting a debut from James Leake, 119k defender. Should be a great selection in your SuperCoach, but he looks like he's going to be taking into a midfield sort of role. He's trained there most of the summer and has looked quite impressive. So I'm very excited to potentially see him there. But a debut for Ollie Hannaford might be out of the picture. I don't think he's in the best 23 as it stands. Cody Angove is one that, if you look at him on the wing, he's definitely a chance there. So he was at Bolter in the draft, if you remember. No one really had him inside that top 40, and then the Giants really went early in the 20s. So he could be a really exciting player on a wing there. But yeah, there's plenty of options for those cheaper price players early in the season for the Giants, with 4 sort of rookie price players named on the bench.
Yeah, hopefully, most of them make the cut. And then if we jump into the Pies, not as much SuperCoach relevance here, I don't think. Harry Perryman may be the one named on a wing, but we'll think he'll spend plenty of time around the ball. Much else there to note. Ed Allen, again, on the extended bench. He was obviously talked up a lot by, I think Nick Dacos was the one who said he could be a superstar early in the summer, but didn't get a huge run certainly during the Amy game. So, I'd be, even if he does make the cut, I reckon he's a classic sub candidate.
Yeah, I'm a bit worried about Ed Allen. If he does end up in the side, he's primed for that sort of either half forward wing role, which isn't a huge scoring role for young players, or he's a chance for that sub vest. So still touch and go whether he's in the best 23. The Pies confirmed that Tim Membry is going to be in the side, even though he's on the extended bench. He'll play his first game, but that wasn't unexpected. So that adds a bit of height to that Pies forward line. But yeah, Ed Allen's the only one that I'm keeping an eye on as that sort of rookie price player potentially coming into that side. And I really like him. I'm a big fan of him, but there's just a couple of names ahead of him at this point.
Yeah, and Perryman's one that obviously scored really well against the Tigers in the Amy series. Might see how he goes against a little bit tougher opposition. No disrespect to how Richmond's travelling at the moment, but we'll watch him here because he's a nice price in the back line, and he's sort of in my basket of options if Sicily is not going to be there. So he's someone that I'll be watching closely. I think not a huge accumulator of the ball, but if he's got a good role, lays a lot of tackles, so that's a pretty good starting point for SuperCoach. Average sort of in the 70s last year, but has averaged in the 90s before when he's had more of a midfield role. So that's something I'll be watching for this year. Now, time for something that is going to be a regular segment every week on this show. Welcome to this week's Best Bets segment, powered by Betr. And I was looking through the odds earlier today, Foz, and I've come up with a couple of good ones. So tell me what you think of these. Will Day, now we mentioned that he was named in the forward pocket. We probably don't expect him to line up there, but $2.10 to kick a goal at any time during that game. What do you think of those odds?
Yeah, well, he kicked a couple in the pracky against Geelong down at GMHBA. He spent a fair bit of time forward of the ball, and he's definitely a chance there. I think he ended up having 4 or 5 shots on goal and converted 2 of them. So certainly a chance there.
Don't mind that. Looking also in that game, Angus Sheldrick for big. The Phantom tipped me off on this one. He's a massive Angus Sheldrick fan. $1.90 to have 20 plus disposals. Harry Perryman, if you think you can get a fair bit of the pill, $5, pretty good odds to get him 25 or more possessions against the Giants. And I was looking at the futures as well, and I did look up the Tigers under or over wins for the year to win less than 2.5 games, $1.85, and that could be easy money, I reckon. As sad as it makes me to say it.
As a Tigers fan, you must be distraught at that, the fact that you're taking the unders.
Yeah, well, I might get something out of it. And we've got some good draft picks probably at the end of the year. So, don't mind that. But that's our best bets for the week. And always remember, what is Gambly really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website. All right, now I did mention some questions. Oh, we've got a little slide here. Look, Dossie's got us all set up beautifully for the first show of the year, and there are a couple here. Let's see. Well, Recco's asking, Perryman a good pick? I actually think he is a good pick. I suppose think he's probably more of a kind of a 90 to 95 average maybe rather than a top-end premium, but that's still pretty good value, and he's certainly someone I'll be considering if Sicily's out, which it looks like he might be. So we touched on that. What do you think going away from this game? But a question here about Joel Fraser, another value option in defence. He's another probably 100 grand cheaper than a Perryman type. If you think he could score similarly, we'll certainly free up some money to maybe do something else somewhere else in the ground. What have you liked what you've seen from him in the preseason?
Yeah, I have. I think he's a very good player, and playing off that halfback, it's a slightly different role than what we saw last year. The one concern I do have is Bailey Dale sort of missing time, Ed Richards missing a bit of time, both of them being that sort of athletic kick first halfback options, and they're being the main distributors in the past couple of seasons at the Bulldogs. So that's one thing that I'm watching for. Both have been, nagged with a couple of calf issues. I expect both will play round one, but if Fraser scores well early, you could easily downgrade from a Perryman or a Jaden Short if either of them start poorly. Bank an extra 100, 150k, and load up somewhere else. So that is an option there. I'm not completely sold on starting him, but I have seen him in the preseason and he's looked really good. And the role's there for him. If one of those two guys misses time to start the year, is certainly an option, but a slightly riskier one around that price point.
Yeah, for sure. And the Bont did talk him up, so that's a plus in his favour. We're still in the backline question here. Would you take Nazaya, Wanganeen Miller, or Max Holmes? So I guess Holmes jumps back into calculations maybe a bit more than he was, given there's no buy now for the Cats, or that's how things are playing out. So, love his role. I love Nazaya as well. So I think they're both good picks, but if you had to choose one, who do you like?
I've got both. So, yeah. I think I had Nazai before I had Holmes. I think that was mainly due to the buys. But I still think that rebounding role off halfback and Naz is elite by foot. He never wastes an opportunity. So I think him, but just slightly over Holmes. I think Holmes in the midfield is going to work really well with, as that main guy getting the ball. He's so clean by foot as well. So it can't fault him.
Yeah, it was interesting to see Naz in the centre bounces for basically the whole second half in that Amy game, but hopefully just Ross throwing a few magnets around to see what they look like. And I noticed Lee Montagna, of course, SuperCoach ambassador this year, had Jack Sinclair still in his team. So I took him out, when that injury news came through early in the preseason, and haven't really thought about him since then. But it looks like he might play in round one. So maybe I should be thinking about him again, although always a question mark with someone with an interrupted preseason. But yeah, I've really struggled with those top-end defenders. But now there's maybe a few more options. But that's all the questions for today, and thanks everybody for tuning in for the first episode of our live team show. Plenty of news and interest there, even with just the two games. But we'll be back next Thursday. We'll have 9 games to talk about, and SuperCoach will be kicking off for real. So it might be a little bit more stressful time, but more exciting as well. So enjoy the opening round fixtures, and then we can make as many changes as we like to our SuperCoach teams before next week. Foz, thanks for coming on. Been a wealth of information. So looking forward to doing this every week for the next 24 rounds.
Can't wait, Al. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll talk to you soon.